Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sam Elliott 64, and I'm once again joined alongside.
Anderson 9132.
And it's time for week 5 of Robot Wars Reviewed. And we have two guests this week. Returning from the depths of hell, we have Dave Lawrie from Team Nuts. Hello, Dave.
Hello, I'm back.
You couldn't
Yes.
sound less enthusiastic if you tried, to be honest.
Just to
Yeah.
give context, we are recording this quite early in the morning, so
Yeah. We've done a rejig of things, but it's all good. And our other guest this week is Jimjamatic of YouTube, also known as James. Hello, James.
Hello, nice to see you. Nice to
Oh.
hear my voice finally.
Oh, yes. Right. So, as I said, time for week 5. But I think first, as I said, no, last week we did Anderson and Rostock gave their thoughts on week 3. So, James and Dave, you're more than welcome to give your thoughts on week 4. What do you reckon?
Ooh, I'll let you go first for one, Dave. It's all right.
all right. Well, week 4 for me was brilliant. It was one of the I couldn't join you guys last week, as you know, but the week 4 was something. It was where the series really kind of ignited. It just went off on one, and everything was suddenly great, and it was. You sort of forgot about the mechanics of how everything was being shot and just got stuck in and enjoyed some battles, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. It was definitely the best heat of the series, in my opinion, because it just had there was so much going on. A lot of the battles are really great. It wasn't like there was like maybe one or two great battles, and then the other two there was like it was okay. I mean, it was like right from the start. The 4 robots in the second round, they all could have won the heat if they had a good round, and no one got a 0 score, which is like the best thing that could happen. Like
I think that was the only time this whole series that anyone hadn't got a 0 score in the round robin.
Yeah, it's true, and it was like there was no real controversy. Maybe apart from maybe Storm 2 breaking down the end of its battle, but I think
Storm 2 versus Eruption is
yeah.
Point. Apart from
Storm
that,
2 versus Apollo was worse. I'm sorry, that is a crap decision. Anyway, sorry.
no, I disagree.
Yeah, I probably disagree as well, but
Anyway, I think ultimately, I think we can all agree that Heat 4 so far has been the best of the series, best episode of the
So
series.
far,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
So I suppose we must move on to Heat 5, and we'll start off with that first round match between Champa, Ironside, Pulsar, and Thermidor II. I'm going to start with Thermidor II. Purely
Did do anything.
Purely because
point?
it kind of just got hit once by Ironside, and that was it. It frustrates me because Anderson, you're not a massive fan of Thermidor, but myself and James, we respect Thermidor for what it is.
I like it. I mean, I won't go it's my favourite robot ever, but I've enjoyed watching it.
Exactly.
I like the design of it and stuff. It's all right.
Exactly, and I just think that Thermidor, had it got going again, could have done some serious stuff in this heat because it's still essentially a pretty good robot. It's got a very powerful flipper. However, unfortunately, it just kind of it just got hit once and that was it.
I had a tendency to do that, for some reason. It did it with Prize Fighter and all that as well. I don't know why it seems to just knock itself out.
Yeah, this fight pretty much proved exactly what my thoughts are on good old jolly Thermidor 2. I think it's very overrated, and that's mainly because it's one of the most unreliable machines ever, and this literally proved it. One hit, bang. Typhoon 2, one hit, bang. Prize Fighter, flipped over, bang. It's just... Stinger, he gets hit once by Stinger's mace, bang. I just... yeah, sorry if you guys are watching this. I mean, I'm a big fan of your cousin Ashens on YouTube, but in all honesty, no.
Dave, your thoughts on Thermidor 2?
I think the thing about Thermidor 2 across the history of Robot Wars is it is either a feast or a famine. It's either one hit and it's dead, or it's in the semi-finals, and it really isn't very consistent in its.
I liked how it carried on tradition, though. It's either the semi-finals or the first round, and that's it.
They'll win the heat. That's where we're heading.
Although actually in Series 7 they definitely had the honour of going to semi-finals and getting knocked out in one hit.
Well, yeah.
So they got both there in that case.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the only two modes of Thermidor 2. It's either one hit or it wins. That's it.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed. I was a bit disappointed with the Thermidor 2. I won't lie. I thought potentially it could do a little bit more than what it did. Obviously, it's been re-armored. It's got a few new internal bits. I think the claws now work as well, don't they? They now work again.
Do they? I didn't see them moving during the battle. So.
No, I believe they are now functioning weapons again. I don't remember where I read that, but I read that somewhere, and apparently that they now move. But these things happen, and Thermidor once again giving us a great display of either getting hit in round one and losing, or going through and winning the heat. But they got hit in round one this time, and that's the end of Thermidor II, really.
Actually, I have to say though, even though it's a very minor detail, I just kind of like the fact that before the battle started, it was like glowing neon. Like it's just glowing in the dark now for some reason.
That paint job is like it just looks so much different. It looks vibrant and it's colourful. It is quite nice to see in the arena still. A very bright and colourful robot, other than like Overdozer. But
Overdoses was if it had got chance, it would have wrecked everything. Believe me, Dan Tomkio would have been nothing.
Oh yeah, Overdozer is Bay.
So who do we move on from now? I mean, I think we should go. I will go to Ironside. I think next up, because Ironside was always going to go through this fight. It was a case of this was the standout robot in this fight.
Definitely.
I'll be honest now, right? Ironside has been, in my opinion, more impressive than Carbide, because just on the damage scale alone that it did. I mean, yeah, sure, Carbide ripped off Nuts' wheel. Sorry, Dave, and all that.
You're always apologising for that.
It's sad.
It's called anxiety. Get over it. But no, basically, but this one was the first time we saw this series of robots. Side panels are being removed. I mean, yeah, okay, it was a Series 7 robot, but still, it's still we saw side panels getting removed. So, and the weapon was very impressive, and I think personally, it's probably the most powerful one we've seen in the whole series thus far.
I can see what you mean. I mean, actually, I'll have to say in advance that when I looked at Ironside 3 for the first time, I wasn't actually that impressed with it for some reason, but I don't know why. I knew how heavy the disc was, but I have to make an absolute apology in advance because that thing was pretty good. In advance, I wasn't like betting it to fail, but I thought it might do okay, but maybe it might just be like, a decent bar spinner. But actually, I was really impressed with it. I really liked it, and it did a lot of damage to the Champa, which is, I suppose, it's not hard to do, but it was still nice to see the weapon working.
In terms of Ironside, I was really happy to see Team Mouse obviously get represented, and obviously. For years and years, okay, obviously Team Mouse had Velociriptor and Mighty Mouse in the original showing. They have Mega Mouse as well on the live circuit. It's so nice to have a robot from them that was going to go out and attack.
Yeah.
Because as much as I liked Mighty Mouse and Velociriptor for what they were, they were very defensive minded.
Mm. I mean, Velociriptor's highlight was scoring a goal, and that was the first time it ever appeared. So,
and Mighty Mouse's was running away from Chronic long enough for Chronic to die.
Yeah.
I've just finished my write-up for this heat before we recorded this, and I described it as Trevor Wright always built really good defensive machines, really colourful, really bright, really surprising that his tactics worked out and stuff. But it's so nice to see something so sort of stark and brutal.
And go in and go and kill things.
Oh, yeah.
It's so nice. And
it's not just another mouse robot with a disc on it. It's this brutal industrial, like, grindcore, heavy, dirty machine. And there's been no clues up to this point that they had that in them. It's so kind of glorious.
I said at the start of the series on the preview that it looked very grungy, and I think that's a nice way to describe it. It just looks dirty. It looks like a dirty fighter.
I think I know what it is. It's got to be that beard of his. He's got a real evil person beard, hasn't he? He's got an evil man beard. A right Healy beard, He's
got a John Reed look going there.
I think it's all to do with the whirly arm dance in the.
I was going to say,
I love that.
Actually, the beard and the whirly arm dance. Has he been taking his meds properly, or is he just? No, we love you really, Trevor. We love you really, man, and it's great. It's great to see a legend, because he is in his own right a legend, right? I mean, he never really did very well, but he's a legend in his own right. So since Series 3, come on, it's great to see him back.
Yeah. He's an absolutely, genuinely amazing person. Like, I'm not here to talk about people. I'm here to talk about the fighting. But underneath, Trevor Wright is one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life.
It does seem like that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's also one more Ironside.
Hashtag love for Trevor.
Hashtag behind the scenes gossip, people.
Oh yes, get it trending. If
Trevor Wright is quite nice.
that is some top insider gossip. James, you were going to say about
No, I was just saying quickly that Ironside 3, one thing I liked about it is, like, I mean, with Velociriptor and Mighty Mouse, when you look at them, you can tell they're built by the same people because they've got the same body shape, and Same kind of like they got little spikes at the front. And it still looks very. I mean, Mighty Mouse just looks like a reskin of Velociraptor basically, and it probably is. But I don't know if it is or not. But it's got.
No, they're separate machines, but yeah, I know what.
Yeah, they look very. I mean, I thought they were when I first saw it. I thought, oh, it's just them entering a new robot, but paint scheme. But it's nice because if I didn't know it was them, I wouldn't have gone. That's the Mighty Mouse team.
I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't. It looks a very far cry from what Mighty Mouse and Velociraptor were.
For anyone that doesn't know the history, Ironside 1 and 2 were both featherweight versions.
Yes.
And
right.
The original Ironside was basically a hexagon-shaped pusher. The second Ironside, Ironside 2, the featherweight version, looks pretty identical to the heavyweight version.
Yeah, it's got that big spinner, hasn't it?
Mm.
So that's why it's Ironside 3. But
did the Ironside 2 heavy featherweight ever do any well? I'm not too sure. I haven't really watched
well, you see,
so I don't really know.
This is the thing, because Ironside 3 happened so quickly and the build was so quick, when they turned up with it, we all went, oh, okay, it's a heavyweight version of the featherweight. The featherweight never really worked that well. It worked well in testing. It never did much in the arena. So everyone was kind of expecting it to peter out. And then it just came and did its thing, and it was just...
And then everyone was like, oh...
Yeah,
it's actually really good.
Oh, dear.
I'm now afraid.
Yeah, in terms of, Ironside, I think we've discussed it enough, but in terms of going forward with Ironside, the stream egg a little bit lackluster, and it didn't do its job later on. We'll get to that when we get to that. That's going to be a big talking point.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it didn't in the right place, because I mean the problem is with the stream egg where it was that there was too much body weight on one side of it, so I can't really see it. I mean, it's like if it was more central to the body, it would have had more chance of actually riding it.
The problem with that, though, I don't think they could have got enough leverage then.
Too weight out balancing it.
It's far too compact a machine to kind of put it anywhere else. Anywhere else, it would have been in the way of its own blade, because the blade is so kind of huge.
Yeah, that thing is enormous.
It's massive.
Ironside 3 is great because it's all or nothing. It's big bar with spinny bit or death.
A bit like most of the robots in like BattleBots or massive spinners. It's like you just go in there. If you break apart, well, that was expected. Really.
Yeah. So I think we'll move on to we'll say Pulsar first, because this was this is the last battle I saw before I had to leave, because I had to get back to Birmingham pretty sharpish. And it was a great fight to go out on, obviously, but I was so gutted that Pulsar went out in such a way. It was one hit and then bang, that was it, game over for Pulsar.
Oh yeah, I mean it's actually one. No, sorry. That's yeah, sorry.
Speak, man, speak.
No, you just go first. It's alright. You go first. Go.
Okay, right. Basically, as I stated, this was my tip to win because it just looked so good, and of course I'd heard the beautiful noise that drum made, and it was all good. And then I see that, and I'm just like, I'm done. Bye. See you later. I'm done. Yeah, goodbye. Just throw the controller over. See you later. I'm out of here. Obviously, I just kept watching. Thankfully, I did. We'll get to that again later. But again, that was a really disappointing start, though, to its run, wasn't it?
It was a bit lackluster, wasn't it? I felt like a bit short. If that had been it, I'd have felt very shortchanged. I mean, obviously that's not down to the team. It was a great hit from Ironside to get it in such a way where the wheels just broke. However,
I will say, sorry.
However, I will say that it would have been a huge disappointment, and I'm sure the team would have agreed as well. They'd have thought, we could have done so much better. And it was just unlucky this time. But Anderson, you were going to say.
Yeah, I am going to say this, right? Okay, this is going to sound a little harsh, and I know they're watching most likely, so I am sorry this offends you, but god damn, you were lucky. There you go, done. Right. Okay.
Oh yeah, that is a given. They were pretty lucky. I mean, it's like it could have ended up in like an Orte situation where it could have been really great, but then knocked out really quickly, and you're like, oh, okay. But then they got a bit. And actually, one thing about the decision, I'm not saying it was a bad decision. I mean, I think out of the two, I'd rather see them back than Thermidor II, really. Considering, but the thing is, one of the things they said about Thermidor II, like why it's something more original, which I think is fair enough. But one of the things they said about Thermidor II is that it didn't do that much. In fairness, I don't think they did much either in their battle. It was a bit unfair to just say that was the reason why.
Pulsar did take the front off Champa a little bit, didn't it? It took one of the front panels off, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
There's also Pulsar got a hit on Ironside, which you you only just see in the edit of it. But there is, if you watch it, it cuts to kind of the Roboteer's view, and you can see Pulsar hit Ironside quite spectacularly, actually, down in the arena.
Right.
So
Good old editing again.
Well, yeah, the edited. I think through the series in general, they've had a problem with the cameras, and they've had to kind of make do a lot of the time, and they've missed a couple of things. The series came together as quickly as the robots did. They were still putting the roof on the arena the night before we were supposed to fight. So a lot of these bugs will iron out later. The one thing I'll give you some background on Pulsar. It arrived completely not working. It was originally supposed to be in a different heat. It had to withdraw from that heat. It was then the first reserve robot and got put back into this heat when another robot withdrew. And throughout all that time, Ellis spent basically all day and night constructing the robot and trying to get it working. And my teammate Lawrie from Team Nuts was doing the programming to try and get... Because Pulsar's all brushless drive, which to most people doesn't sound like much, but it's all new technology. Like very few of the robots besides Big Nipper are using brushless motors for drive currently. And it was literally, it sparked into life the minute before they put it in.
I was going to say, because Dara mentioned because the fight film just before that was, I think it was Eruption and them lot in their first round. I think it was either that or the other one. I can't remember which one it was. And before they started the interviews, you heard this almighty siren, like the roar across the whole arena, and everyone was just like, "Oh my god, what is that?"
Yeah.
Like, and I was in there was someone in the crowd, I can't remember, and they'd been there the day before, and they said, "Oh my god, that's Carbide! I can hear Carbide spinning up," and it wasn't. It was Pulsar. And I was like, "Oh, hello, there's another one now that's got that's that really cool death whir, if you like."
Pulsar turned a lot of heads when they put it in the test arena and fired it up, and you could literally hear that noise reverberate throughout the entire complex. It was quite extraordinary. We were all upstairs in the green room, and we all kind of went running down going, "What on earth is that?" And someone went, "Oh, it's just Pulsar testing in the box." And we were like, "Oh, right."
Well then, glad we're not with them.
It's nothing, just, well, Pulsar, I know what anyway.
Anderson, you're gonna have to say that again. You're gonna have to say that again, mate. You just completely cut out there.
Completely bad, did I?
Yeah.
I'll just leave it then. Yeah, mate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's
I'm too good to repeat. You know?
Pulsar's a good robot and all. I mean, it's one of the things that actually surprised me when I saw. I mean, I guess when you see the pictures, you kind of go, you can't really get the scales in, but it's so tiny, it's so compact. Pulsar, it's like Foxic. It just managed to put so much into such a tiny little robot, but it was. I mean, I'm just really glad they got a second chance, really, because I mean, I was kind of like, oh, it's over, and I was like, although I was happy, I was happy for Champa, which we'll get to in a sec. It was like, it was a lot of build up for nothing, but if they had to get the second place, it had to be them. To be honest with you.
I know that Ellis from Pulsar will probably listen to this, and he won't mind me saying that before the episode went out, he was actually quite worried about it all, because the picture had gone up on the Robot Wars website, and all the fans had immediately rated him as the next series winner and the greatest machine ever made. And having known how Pulsar fared and how kind of stop-start it was, and how it went out in round one. I mean, let's be honest, it was defeated in the first round.
Yeah.
He was quite apprehensive about this kind of weight on his shoulders of everyone going, "Oh, it's this amazing new machine. It's going to cause absolute carnage throughout the arena." And then to be knocked out in such a kind of minor, precise way, he was really quite worried about it. And I think he was as relieved as anyone else to get a redecision, to get reinstated and show actually what it could do.
I think this is a good segue into Champa for this heat.
Oh, Champa.
Good. It has to be said. Okay, from my point of view, Champa is one of my favourite robots ever. I love Champa, and it was so annoying. Like when I saw the draw that they had, like I knew about the 13 Black Stinger Thermidor draw. Obviously, they're getting Thermidor again, of all things, which is crazy. But to get Drew in that group stage, goodness me, where is the luck for Champa?
Yeah, I mean they got a bit of luck. Yeah, they got a lot of luck, and then later on it all went away again.
Yeah.
I think with Champa, before this reboot, it's kind of like the opposite of Thermidor II. It always seemed to perform but never get anywhere. And with the exception of the Iron Maiden's Championship, which it won, it was always a really good robot that was always bringing it to the battle and was really good despite its amazing opponents, and then sort of petered out at the end and was just unlucky to not have the finishing power to stay in.
I was going to say, because you have to think, in that first match, I mean, for a newcomer to get drew against a series finalist from Series 4, 13 Black, who looks scary as it is, and Thermidor, obviously, very experienced as well, you have to think, that's a really unlucky draw. To get drew against Thermidor again, and against two massive spinners in Pulsar and Ironside, you just think, like, what do we need to do to get a break?
But it really brought it to this fight, and I'm not going to take anything away from Champa or hear a bad word about it, because as much as it dominated Thermidor 2 for the small amount that we saw that robot, it then proceeded to keep attacking despite being ripped limb from limb. Was still moving, fully functional at the end of that battle. Like
it was dead on one side.
Not in that battle.
Yeah, no, that was in the next battle.
It was in that battle.
They Champa, like the fact that they were kept going in and trying to attack, at least doing something.
No, you saw it trying to push. You saw it trying to push Pulsar in the pit, and it dead on ones. Oh.
The drive was skew-whiff by the end, but it was still working.
Yeah, it was like it was like sort of lopsided, wasn't it?
The thing, but yeah, I mean, to take that amount of damage and to still try and fight on and push Pulsar down the pit right to the death. I mean, you can't take anything away from that machine, and you can say that it's easy to damage and all this, but it really brought it to the fight again, and it's just the immense amount of bad luck that they've had.
If there's one word that could describe Champa in this series, it was trier.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
and it just wouldn't die, and it would refuse to die until it killed itself. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
It reminds me a lot of Onslaught.
Yes.
In that way. Yeah, it doesn't give up, doesn't die, keeps going, takes a lot of punishment, and then just implodes on itself.
Arnold Terminator.
Yeah.
Arnold Terminator. Yes.
Just bits and bobs falling off it and holes in it, but it just won't go away. It's always on you, and it's always about to kind of beat you, even though you've wrecked it for the first half of the battle.
Yeah, Ton to Run. Now that had some good reliability lines.
Oh yes, Ton to Run, one of the best robots ever made. Obviously, I mean, obviously, it's not like in terms of like God. I was just thinking about Dietor as well. It's one of those robots that it's. At the surface, it's a joke entry, but they got 2 heat finals and also never once broke down, never even after getting taken apart, put back together again, losing a weapon. They still never broke down once. They just sat on fire. And that was it. That's all they ever did.
Yeah, and a huge respect for Champa to get that, and all of the other teams to get that thing going again in the second round, because that was a mess. Let's be honest, it was a mess.
Let me jump in here. As much as you can see on the screen that Ironside ripped it limb from limb, but you cannot see the level of damage that was done to that machine. I have a picture of it from the pits from after it came out of that fight, and it was unrecognizable. Like, it wasn't just some side panels fell off. It was just in pieces.
Yeah, the jaw was ripped away as well, and everything else.
Oh yeah.
Dave, send us that and we can put it in the podcast.
Oh, definitely, yeah, we'll see that.
I will seek permission from Champa.
Please do.
That's cool. That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
I think they'll be all too happy. I think they're an absolutely adorable team.
God, yeah, they're great. But I think that's pretty much summarised Champa up. So going out in this round.
Can I just quickly say one more thing? Can I just quickly say one more slight little thing? I've forgotten what I was going to say, so don't worry. I've literally forgotten it.
We are really professional here on Robot Wars Reviewed. So out go Thermidor II and Pulsar in this
bye, Pulsar. See you later.
They're definitely out. They're not coming back. They are finished. Goodbye. Toodaloo. Nice knowing you. So long.
And we move on to our second four-way, which sees Gabriel, Infernal Contraption, Crazy Coupe, 88, and Beast. And we'll start with Infernal Contraption. Why not?
Oh, Jesus. I'm sorry. As we're actually, it's one of those robots. I mean, again, when I talk about a robot, it's nothing to do with the team. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. I'm not saying you're shit, you're terrible. I really hate Infernal Contraption as a robot. I mean, it's one of those robots like it just looks so like unwieldy. Like the wheels always. I mean, they're so exposed to begin with, which happens with all thwack type robots, which is fair enough. But the drum doesn't spin very fast. I mean, as soon as it started up, the drum was like going all over the place, not really going forwards and able to hit anything. And it took itself out by activating the pit button and then accidentally driving into pit itself. And I don't remember it doing anything in the battle whatsoever. I mean, in Series 6 and 7, I don't remember it doing anything either. And in the University one, I think, I don't remember it doing anything.
I think from a competitive point of view, Infernal Contraption is just not there. Let's all be honest. It's not a competitive robot, but from an engineering standpoint, like the fact they've managed to fit everything into such a small space is quite remarkable.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, in I would say engineering wise, it's brilliant, but. Again, I think when I look at robots like partly competitive and like the engineering's like it's a bonus to me. Like you can make a well-engineered robot, but it doesn't mean it's going to be like really well in the battles. I mean, something like I remember like that Series 5 robot.
Cost Mortis, anyone?
I was going to say something like 11 from Series 5. Like it's a massive bed-shaped robot, but God, was that thing ever going to do anything? No, it got killed like in the first hit. But it's like when it's interesting, but I thought to myself, it's gonna. I even predicted I thought it's probably just gonna drive into pit or something, and I was like,
and it did.
Yeah, yeah. But I was like, wow, I'm psychic here. I should just say everything now, and then hope it comes true.
Who's winning the series, James? Who's winning the series?
Oh! It's gonna be Overdoser. They'll bring Robot back somehow. You never know.
They're gonna get the wild card. Dave, any thoughts on Infernal Contraption?
Yeah, I'll offer contrast because Infernal Contraption is one of my favourite robots.
All right,
James, you've offended Dave. God damn it.
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, you guys are getting to know me by now. I don't really care about how well any robot does in a competition. It's the world of Robot Wars would be so much duller if robots like Infernal Contraption weren't around. It's just. It doesn't function on any kind of normal level. It's mad. I refer to it often as a capsule. It's like this small rolly thing that they don't know where it's going. We don't know where it's going. Like I adore it. It's mad and it's silly and it's pretty terrible at fighting. And to me, that's what it's all about. It's just like this, like. When you turn up to the pits, when you compete in Robot Wars, and you think about all the robots that you imagine may be there, and then something like Infernal Contraption turns up, and you go, oh, that too apparently is a design one once thought might be a good idea. It's just wonderful. And I don't care that it goes out in round one and that it drives in the pit. In fact, it almost makes it better because then it makes space for these better robots to come.
Yeah. As much as Infernal Contraption isn't like competitive, it offers a small amount of like fun to the arena. Like you just have no idea what it's going to do. Kind of like Stinger, how it used to be. Obviously, Stinger was a lot more effective than Infernal Contraption ever was, but it's very similar in that respect.
Like a Chromalot. It's a bit like a Chromalot. It's pants. It's good pants. I think that's the best way you can describe that.
That's perfect. Move on. Infernal Contraption is good pants.
Yeah, there we go. Right, we'll move on to the mighty Gabriel.
Gabriel.
I
mean, I'll be honest with you, this is the first time I've ever seen it in like a... This is one of the first times I've ever seen it because I don't follow the live circuit. I mean, I follow the ant weight circuit, but not the heavyweights and all and light and all that. And I mean, I've seen like one or two like battles filmed by someone. And I think, it's like a Stinger type robot, but
it is not like Stinger. This is Stinger on steroids.
It's massive. It is absolutely huge. I mean, I thought like robots like Death Warmed Up and Granny's Revenge are really massive, but this thing's like, it looks like it's taking up an entire bench. Just of the robot.
What I love about this episode is that Gabriel. We've known about Gabriel for years, obviously, and we've seen them come through with two versions of their robot, Saint, and it's slowly evolved into this colossal thing called Gabriel, and we adore it. And it was so nice to see it finally on TV and get kind of the fans involved, and people who saw the pictures of it when it first came out went, what the hell is that? That has no chance. It looks like someone built like some shelves and forgot to put armor on it, and what that you can't even describe it. And it sits on this. When they do the shooting of the pictures, it sits on the table, and it barely fits on the table, and nobody knows quite what to do with it in the recording. They didn't know how to do its kind of profile shots and things because it was so vast. And then it goes in the arena and it does its thing, and everyone kind of went, "Oh, I get it now." Like this machine is built to fight, and it's built to fight in a way that nobody ever. It's like Infernal Contraption, but actually effective,
but functional.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, it's so durable. I mean, the amount of hits it took from Ironside 3 in its battle, and it was just like still wobbling around. And actually, one thing I have to give it credit for. I mean, obviously, this is like one of the first times I've probably seen it. I mean, unlike a lot of like big thwack bots, it has its main body where a lot of the electronics is really high up.
Yeah.
So the wheels take most of the brunt, and I thought the wheels were going to snap or something, but they just bounced around and like just kind of like the tires came off, sure, but it was still moving and able to use its weapon. And I was like, will the little thing not die? It just never die. Like nothing like seems to stop it. It's brilliant.
It is a perfect example, in my personal opinion, of a robot that both manages to capture the imagination of the sport and also be effective in the sport. There's not many robots that can do both. And
Gabriel was,
I mean,
like,
just literally on a design aspect. I mean, literally, when you think about it, right, because it's so tall, flippers can't really get a hold of it. The wheels tend to bend and flex out of the way of spinners, so they can't really snap. The tires are just there for show, I think, because they went quite easily without the tires. The weapon is a monster and a half. I mean, literally, that thing it actually scares me, to be honest. And yeah, I just personally think it was a brilliant design in general.
I have to say, like watching Gabriel just like rock around the arena, like it just the way it moves forward with, like, it's almost like a confident. It just goes in and just like it hits and it continues to hit and it just won't stop, and it's great. I love it. I love the way Gabriel fights.
I think the only time,
really nice.
And the team cap is also a great sport. Just saying.
Oh, Craig Colliers, he's great, isn't he?
Oh, he's
great,
pretty
cool.
cool.
Yeah, great sport. I mean, so don't want to damage their robot anymore. Nice one, lad. I appreciate that a lot. That's really good.
Yeah, actually, the only time I think it
more. That's amazing.
I think the only time Gabriel came unstuck was probably in that fight against. I think it was Ironside's fight where he got stuck on the pit and it just couldn't flame bit and just couldn't get off.
That was more to the weapon, I think.
I think so. That was probably the only time I think in the entire heat where I was like, oh, it's in trouble, apart from just wailing, flying around stuff and actually just trying to get out of the way or trying to hit things. It's like, oh, it's actually stuck.
Yeah,
I didn't think you'd do that.
Can I talk a bit about the technical aspects of Gabriel?
Yeah, please do.
Because what people from outside look at is they look at Gabriel and they think it's the simplest robot ever made. They think it's a variation on Stinger and it's a thwack bot. And thwack bots were never kind of that effective. They always kind of bounced off things. Gabriel hits really hard. Like if you look at your robot after Gabriel's had to go at it, it's full of holes. You may not see that on the TV, but it really does whack you.
I can't remember where I read this, but apparently they bent dead metal, didn't they?
Yes. Oh, they're known on the live circuit for taking the house robots and there's big holes in Major Damage, the live house robot. The big holes in the head of that from Gabriel because it's so large, it just kind of thwacks him on the head the whole time, and it's become a thing. Gabriel is well known for damaging house robots.
Just ask Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, I made that thing was literally a pancake. No, right, okay. Hashtag Gabriel for new house robot.
Big enough.
But the thing about Gabriel that's very impressive is underneath the simplicity of it, there's this mechanism that it has in the wheels. It has something called torque sensors, which Craig mentions in the show. And what they do is they allow it to get in on the active weapon rule. Because I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, flatbots."
I was going to say, I was very curious as to why they were allowed in with an active weapon rule, whereas Stinger before many years ago wasn't. This is because of that, is it?
Yeah. Well, the active weapon rule states that if you can move the weapon and the robot stays still, that it's an active weapon regardless of the robot. So that is open.
Stinger could do that. Stinger could do that.
Well, it's open to a lot of interpretation. Like, the active weapon rule isn't supposed to quash people. It's not supposed to stop them entering. there's plenty of ways to do it. But what Gabriel does is it has the torque sensors in the wheels, and what they can do is they can loosen and harden the axle attached to the wheel. So it's a bit like two sponges pressing against the wheel. So if they tighten up the torque sensors, it gets really tight to the wheel, and when they press the motor forward, it drives with full power. But if they loosen the torque sensors, then the middle arm spins round without the wheels going anywhere.
That is really impressive.
Yeah. So what you've got is this robot that looks like the simplest thing on Earth has this amazingly complicated system. And it's actually what happens in one of the other fights is the torque sensors become damaged and they loosen. So what it was doing in that fight is swinging the weapon around, but the wheels weren't going anywhere. That's because of the technology in it. It's a very, very clever device, and it deserved highlighting.
Yeah, so it's sort of like Stinger refined then. It's sort of a perfected Stinger, if you like.
Yeah, it's like they can disengage the drive and send all the power to the weapon, which Stinger could never do. Stinger has to have the weapon going in order for the wheels to move, whereas Gabriel can do it on two independent systems because of these little torque sensors.
That is so clever.
Actually, it doesn't explain why Chimera managed to get in then.
I will say this, right? Gabriel, is Chimera the same?
Yeah, well, no, Chimera's a bit of an anomaly. They were reserved, I think, because of the sort of lack of active weapon. But I mean, the thing about Axelbots, like, we don't want to discourage people.
Definitely not. Yeah.
If you can build, most people who can get two wheels moving can build an Axelbot, and they don't want to discourage that kind of weaponry. You're never going to be as good as Gabriel is because Gabriel has this extra thought process behind it to make it actually effective.
Right. Well, moving on from Gabriel.
Gabriel proves that Axelbots are no longer outdated.
They can still function in the arena.
Brought it right up to the modern. I mean, it brought it to some modern machines and survived all of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was expecting when they took on Ironside for them to just be in pieces, but they didn't. Move on to Beast then, and Beast for the whole heat seemed to have a lot of technical issues. Was that the case?
Yeah, pretty much. Drive issues, weapon issues. The one thing I do want to say about Beast is it was mocked a lot for lacking armor, but at no point was it damaged in any particular.
I was going to say the way that the you call it scaffolding, so we'll use that as a term. The scaffolding around it is made in such a way where if things hit it just kind of bounces away, and nothing gets hit as a result. It's like a big protective cage.
Yeah.
And nothing will get hit as a result of that. And I mean, apart from the wheel got hit once, but that was a very good shot. But yeah, Beast, myself, Anderson, and Dave probably know a lot better than say James does, and how good Beast is these days. It is a truly stunning machine.
Yeah.
And
it is an actual beast.
It is. And it was a real shame to not see its full potential used, but I suppose that's just one of those things that happen in the arena sometimes.
It's a good parallel to Ironside, because what Beast have done again is make their featherweight in big version.
Yeah.
They're championship dominating featherweights. Beauty 2 and Beauty 8 have just absolutely annihilated everyone on the featherweight circuit.
For years and years and years.
Yeah. So they've built a big version, and rather like Ironside works in the big version, Beast just doesn't. I mean, it works on the live circuit, as Sam was saying. It's
when it needs to.
I think it was the spinners. They'd never fought spinners on the live circuit. They were always concerned with it because of their construction. And, it just did for them in the end, I think.
It was such a shame to see him not do very well. So I remember looking at it and I thought, this is like, I've heard it's good in the live circuit and powerful flipper and all that. And then, I don't know, it was a shame that they didn't get really anything. I mean, I don't remember anything spectacular they did like in terms of the battles in the entire heat. And it was a massive shame to him.
Yeah.
Anderson?
Yeah, I'm going to say this. John Lear, right? Again, huge respect. Series 5, we've been doing this. Great to see you back again. And it's no disrespect to you or your machine, because I know that you had a lot of control problems around it, but it did leave, obviously, because I think we can all agree here when a match happens, it's a proper start. it's never going to be a top-notch battle. And that's the problem I found with this heat, was that a lot of the battles, in my personal opinion, just weren't overly that good. And unfortunately, I think Beast was one of the reasons, because obviously it never worked properly. And again, that's not me having a go at the team or the robot.
It's just one of those things.
Just saying that because it's one of those things, unfortunately, and because of it, it did lead to quite a lackluster heat, unfortunately, in my opinion. This heat did have a lot of technical issues with most of the machines, unfortunately, apart from Gabriel. And I just think that, personally, to a lot of technically bad matches because of it, and that's me personally.
The thing with Beast for me is that if this was in one of, say, Heat 2 or Heat 3, it probably would have dominated.
Yeah, it's honestly such a good machine. It was just unlucky to get Drew in a tough heat.
2 spinners and Gabriel, which the best flipper can do nothing to anyway.
Yeah.
I remember talking when John Lear arrived. I went over and asked how he was doing, and he grunted at me and said, "I've got that thing in my heat," and he meant Gabriel. He knew he just wouldn't be able to do anything to it, and it's like
John Reed versus Nuts.
Oh, not that nuts thing again.
Yeah.
Oh dear, but yeah, I think. Ultimately, they had 2 spinners which they were concerned about, obviously, for the construction. Obviously, Gabriel is unflippable, really, isn't it? Because it's just everything that's able to flip is just so high off the floor anyway. It's just, what do you do?
Look at the draw.
It really is.
Bad draw. That was it.
Speaking of bad draws, Crazy Coupe 88.
Oh, man.
We never really got to see much of it, did we? I was a bit good about that, because it had 2 spinners and both looked, fairly decent, and it got hit into the arena wall, and that was it. It did a Thor.
Yeah.
Defeated by a house robot. What is this? Series 3?
Oh, it's a far cry from that, but I think I don't know if you know what happened to it in that fight. Was it just the link came out, or was it further problem than that, Dave?
It was working and then it wasn't working. This is that's as much as I.
It's probably a link in fact. It did get quite a big slam from Dead Metal, admittedly, on the side. Well, he grabbed and was like, "Oh, fair enough, you're gonna do that," and it went bang.
Oh yeah, I think
like,
whatever happened to it was perfectly justifiable. It was doing its thing in the middle of the arena. It wasn't doing too badly. Both spinners were working, which is always nice to see. And then it went in the corner patrol zone, and Dead Metal hit it, and it died. And that
was all she wrote, really.
Yeah. I'll give them props though, because it's like one of those robots. Like, but
links again.
Yeah, I mean, I both love it, and there's something I love about it, but also, I love the fact there's got 2 spinners that are different. Like, one's horizontal, one's vertical, and one's a bar spin and one's a disc. I kind of like that. Trying to make it unique and have attacks on both sides, but. Again, luckily the exposed wheels weren't a big problem in this particular battle as much. If they'd been in the other heat, it probably would have been a lot worse.
What I love about Crazy Coupe 88 is that going forward with Robot Wars, this is a garage build. It's not particularly technical, and yet they're still trying to define themselves. They're still trying to build some. They've put 2 spinners on it. Okay, they might not be great, but they're trying to do something that sums them up as builders, and that's what people need to be looking at when they build for future series. They need to be looking for ways to do things that are different, especially if they're garage builders and they're not particularly great. All you need is a USP to get on Robot Wars, and I think Crazy Coupe 88 did well to come up with something different.
I think going forward as well, Crazy Coupe has it's quite a good basis, because there's no, if you attack from the front or behind, you're going to get hit, and I think that's quite a clever idea. In a sense, if they can refine it a little bit more in a few series time, we could see Crazy Coupe 88 do really quite a lot of good work. It's just, on this occasion, it was just unlucky.
They could end up with a 13 black type situation where, in Series 5, they just sort of, it looked different, but it didn't do anything. Like in Series 6, it actually got going, and it was like, that's pretty cool. Though.
And it's quite light too, so they have plenty of spec to build on it. I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with next.
Yeah, definitely. Anderson, any thoughts on Crazy Coupe?
Well, the exposed tyres lasted. I'll give it that. But unfortunately, I would have loved to have seen it do more. If I'm honest, I was very gutted. I didn't think it would win the match, but I would have liked to see it do a little bit more than just let's just drive into Dead Metal. We're dead. It was very upsetting. But at the end of the day, again, what Dave said, it was just nice to see the garage build again. It was very reminiscent of Series 3-4 of the design, in
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like a lunchbox on wheels
apart
with
from
two
obviously the fact
spinners.
that
It was great. I love it.
So,
but again, an originality, yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Originality at its finest, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So going out of this fight were Infernal Contraption and Crazy Coupe 88. For our first head-to-head was Gabriel versus Chompalot.
Oh man.
We'll have a moment's silence for Chompalot, please, because first of all, again, obviously we've said already, amazing to get Chompalot going again. And then
I just want to say now, right away, this is actually really nice. Again, going back to what we saw also in Heat A, it was nice to see the actual sportsmanship behind the scenes, because that was one problem with like I said, the original series is, oh look, this team, they win this sportsmanship award. Why? we never saw them do anything sporting. I mean, obviously, Deitor you did and Thunderbird you did, because they, always would that was their style. But like when you saw Pussycat, for example, win it in Series 5, it's like, well, what did they actually do? We didn't see anything of it, so it's nice to see it in this series.
Absolutely, and the fact that they got, I think, we saw Storm 2 in there as well, Terra Turtle, some other teams. I think I saw, was it one of Sabretooth as well? I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
everybody trying to just rebuild this like dead carcass of a robot.
and they got it going, and for a while, for a while they held their own, and then got pushed into dead metal, and that was pretty much it, wasn't it? I mean, Gabriel showed in this fight just how strong it was. It just absolutely was dominant.
Chompalot, though, it managed to get a hold of it.
Yeah, on the very first hit, yeah.
I didn't think it'd be able to get a hold of it, but it got a hold of it, and it did well. It held on until it got pushed into the metal. What I can say about this fight, it was short but sweet.
Yeah.
And again, it was a great showing of how dominant Gabriel was, and it was a good showing by the Cook family, obviously, Simon and Debs, because they did really good to try and they basically did their best with a half-dead robot, really, and I think that's what we can expect from.
It was sort of like
that's all we could really expect. So good on them.
The parallel I draw with this is like, this is how nuts would have been had it had to fight all three fights in the head. Had you had Carbide in round 1, Dave, this probably could have potentially how it could have ended up for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if we'd had Carbide in round 1 and it had got a hit on one of the motors or something, that would have been us out. Like. This can happen to anyone, and I think the thing that we take away from the Chompalot fight, apart from the fact that what you don't see on the thing is that it burned for a good 3 or 4 minutes before they could go anywhere near it, because that's what, when LiPo batteries go up like that,
they go up.
All you can do is wait. You cannot go near them. You just have to wait for the fire to die down. And there's a good kind of 3 or 4 minutes where it was just sat there helplessly burning away, and it's really tragic to watch. But what you take from this fight is that Chompalot is now, well, as of yesterday, it's back to full health.
Oh, nice.
The team are back with aspirations for the next series. They're back in the arena from today, and it's just wonderful to see something so. I don't think anyone watching it went, "Ha ha ha! That robot's gone up in flames." I think everyone.
It was. Yeah, it was more of a case of like, you felt bad because from Deb's reaction, she put so much. Obviously, they put so much work in. Obviously, everyone does into their machines, and it when it ends up getting burnt or whatever else, or it just is disintegrating in the arena, you just like a lot of emotion just drains out of you because you put your heart into it.
Yeah, it's the real kind of paradox of Robot Wars that we all build these machines to take out everybody else and to smash them limb from limb, but then the paradox of that is we care so much about our own work. Like, you put so much time and effort into it, and seeing it torn limb from limb is both spectacular and brilliant and heartbreaking all at the same time. And it's, especially when I think that the poignancy of Chompalot is the fact that it had made round 2. It was starting to get to the stage where it was going somewhere, and then it fizzled out.
That for me is the worst thing, because as I said, they went out in round 1 in Series 6. That was the only time we saw them in the main competition. Obviously, they won the Iron Maidens, but that was a side event, whatever. And for them to finally make it out of round 1, and then for them to blow up, Chompalot got so excited about making it out of round 1, it killed itself. But I have to say,
admittedly, they did go out in a very spectacular way.
I was going to say, at
flying
least
through the air and then set on fire.
at least, you know, if you're gonna have to pull out of the series, at least go out in a blaze of glory, and they really did.
Oh, absolutely.
Blade, very funny.
Listen, Jesus Christ. Dave, you were going to say?
I think the thing to take from Champa is that when they come back, they will have a lot more fans now.
Oh,
because the way that they've gone out is so heartbreaking that they are everybody's favorite robot come next series, and we will all adore to have them back. I can't wait to see them back in the arena and fully fighting again.
Absolutely.
They've pretty much cemented their spot in the next series by going out in such a tragic way, I think.
And I hope so, because as I said already, I love Chomp a lot, so it's just a great robot, and I'm so gutted for them. But as I said, it's all back to normal now. Hopefully, we'll see it again very soon and fighting fit, and hopefully they can not make it through run and not blow up. Hope that's the big hope for next series. But obviously, Gabriel taking the win and the 3 points, Chomp having to pull out and coming back in, as we mentioned already, Pulsar over Thermidor II. I think that was probably the right decision.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I suppose we should move on to Beast and Ironside.
This was a lot of great driving by Ironside, I have to say. I mean, like the only really hard, apart from just giving him a good whack, right, by the back of the robot. I mean, getting the wheel, that was a really good tack. I mean, it was just a great little bit of driving. I remember looking again, wow, they actually got that wheel head on, and they just completely disabled the wheel from there. And I was like, good play, Ironside. That was a great hit.
Yeah,
did well.
The hard thing about bar spinners is that every time they hit something, they practically stop, and you have to run away and get it back to speed again. And it just demonstrated that so perfectly, and the driving was exceptional, that they just managed to run around the arena long enough to spin back up again and then come in and hit it in exactly the place that they needed to. I mean, it was a mercy killing for Beast. It was just kind of like they hit it a couple of times and it was a bit sore and dying, and then they just hit it on the wheel and that was it. It was like precision robot driving. It was superb.
Yeah, and this is the first real sign of where we saw Beast start to get the unreliability coming in.
Yeah.
It was the one side I think died pretty early on, and then from there on it was always going to be a case of Ironside's going to win this one, and they ultimately did.
Good luck, Vienna.
Anderson?
Yeah, great driving from Ironside. Can't say it wasn't good from that perspective. But as I stated earlier, when one robot's not really working properly from the start, sort of thing, it always leads the match to be a bit of a dreary one. So it wasn't, in my opinion, a very good match. But at the same time, huge respect to the Ironside team, especially Trevor, obviously, for doing such great driving. There goes my input.
Oh, okay.
It was quite a simple fight, really. Just hit it a few times, get the wheel, and then it was quite. All Ironside had to do basically was not get flipped at any point, really. And it might have been all right.
Yeah, it speaks for itself, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And someone definitely won it.
Yeah. Well, I think we should move on to Gabriel and Ironside. This, for me, was my favourite fight of the evening.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, this was definitely the most action-packed one side, maybe the heat final.
We have to say, from my perspective, I was, as I said earlier, I was expecting Gabriel's wheels to be all over the place and have massive, great holes in them and everything else, and it just took it. It just took the hits.
It's like a boxer trying to fight a giant mound of jelly. You punch it, but nothing will happen. It'll just bounce off, or maybe you might make a puncture or something, but it'll just be like, oh, that's it.
They didn't even get through.
No, all that happened was bits of the tyre came off, but they seemed sacrificial anyway. A bit like Eruption had that little arm at the front. It was sort of like, they weren't 100% sacrificial, but you could manage to lose a few of them and still be running. And it was really great to watch. Just watching Gabriel, just like, what will it do next? Will it? It's just so unpredictable. I think that's why I love watching it.
I think what Gabriel did in this fight was revolutionised the sport going forwards, because people will have watched that fight who want to build for next time, and they'll be going, oh, we don't have to armour it in wear plate steel and tank materials. We can go out and get something wobbly, and it'll just absorb all the shocks from all the spinners, and then suddenly people will just have to change their game.
Yeah.
Were you surprised, Dave, in terms of how well it dealt with the spinner of Ironside. Like,
well, everyone kind of wondered how Gabriel would deal with spinners. Like we've seen it on the live circuit so much, we know what it does. We know that it has the capacity to win fights, but the spinners were the unknown quantity. Even Craig Collius was kind of going, well, they're either going to bounce off it or they're going to absolutely like tear the wheel off and that be it. I was quite surprised with how well it stood up. I love some of the slow motion shots where you can literally see it rippling. Like that's fantastic. I don't know, it's such a strange sport. Like I've done crazy things in the past. Like I once made an amp weight entirely out of sponge. And I made another one entirely out of
SpongeBob.
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
It was called cleaning product. Cleaning product. And I made another one entirely out of cardboard. And I do things like this, and I put them in the arena, and I go, oh, I wonder how many pieces I'm going to come out in. And then every so often you kind of go, oh, I seem to be winning some fights, and nobody's quite done any damage to it. And you start to realize that although there's a set kind of load of materials that roboteers always use, every so often some newcomer will come along and it's built out of something, and everyone will raise their eyebrows and go, well, that's not going to last very long. And then it does, and it gets the brain going. You kind of start thinking more outside the box. And Gabriel's definitely one of those where it turned up, and everyone, especially people from outside the community, kind of writ it off.
I was going to say, because like obviously, Gabriel turns up and surprised. I think it probably surprised a few people and probably raised a few eyebrows from the Roboteers' point of view. Like possibly the ones that are already in this series. Could that be a potential?
No, a lot of us expected Gabriel to win the series.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. The last major championship we had, Gabriel came third, and it came third really kind of convincingly. It only lost the final fight due to a judge's decision. Like we know what Gabriel can do, and once we saw the draw, we went, well, if it is able to stand up to the spinners, that was the tip to go on. And
wow.
So are his wheels actually made? What are they made of? Is it like a plastic or is it?
It's HDPE, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
The entire Gabriel is HDPE, but the wheels are kept specifically quite thin, and it's so it absorbs impact. It's because the wheels aren't protecting anything. Actually, an interesting nugget of information here for people who like that kind of thing. Craig Collius also built the wheels that we had on Nuts.
All right.
So
actually, it's a similar design somewhere. Like have the tire around like the big wheels.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same. But the wheels from Nuts originally came from one of Craig's earlier robots. I acquired them back in the day for my heavyweight anger, and then they ended up on Nuts. So you can kind of see the evolution there, but there's having these kind of huge flexible wheels with tire. The tire isn't inflated in any way. It's literally a bike tire that's been cut up and bolted to the outside of the wheel. But it gives you so much grip in the steel arenas where everyone else was struggling for grip. These bike tire wheels on Gabriel and Nuts really gave us immaculate control. And it's that kind of thinking of Gabriel looks really amateurish, but behind every single part of it is brain power. And you say like it was surprising from a fan's point of view that it did so well, but from the Roboteers' point of view, knowing what we knew of Gabriel, we were expecting more from it than we actually got. So,
oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. Well, isn't the guy who like runs Gabriel? He's like part of Mensa, isn't he? So he's pretty smart bloke.
And he's an ex-engineer. He runs Mensa, and he's a Christian, so he's absolutely, genuinely the nicest person kind of ever.
Hence Gabriel.
Hence, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Anderson, any thoughts on that fight?
Apart from the Heat fight, I think match of the night. But I think the Heat one was a little better. So that's
Did anyone get that?
Again,
I think so.
Gabriel for lasting the punishment he took.
Yeah. Yeah, and Anderson, your connection is god awful. But I
I'm
think
just going to say this now. I'm on the Isle of Wight in a caravan. Yeah, because I'm on the Isle of Wight in a caravan. That's why.
this is
If
why.
you want, I'll leave if you want, because I've got to go shortly anyway. So if you want, I'll leave and then just you guys get on with it.
We'll quickly get your thoughts though, Anderson, on the grand final in that case. Who do you think's going to get the wild card? And who's going to win the series?
And
I completely agree with that. Anderson, unfortunately, you've cut out.
Apart from Thor, and when it comes to again.
He's gone. There he goes. Unfortunately, so we've lost Anderson, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, because of poor connection. But
it's a sad concern. It's coming from a guy who's in torrential downpour in Lancashire and still getting a half decent signal. This is worrying.
Yeah, well, you're not on an island, but anyway.
I am.
Well, you are. Okay, yeah, you are. But anyway, we'll move on to Pulsar and Beast, and this was really just this is just a case of Beast not fully working in Pulsar, getting a good hit in, and that was it really.
This was a one-hit KO, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's little point kind of analysing this.
There's nothing to discuss. It's just Beast died at the end.
But it was dealt this fight. He just hit and then died.
It was a spectacular hit from Pulsar, and it was time that we actually saw that weapon at full potential. It just went in, and that was it. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and it got the 3 points, and we'll move on to Gabriel and Beast. Now, this for me, this is where the heat started to take a very strange turn. Things got quite controversial at this point. But I completely agree with the decision and the 3 points going to Gabriel. But why wasn't the fight called? I don't understand.
I have no idea. It was like the Dominator Hypnodisc fight. Like, you wonder why nothing was sent earlier. Like I said, maybe this is not. I mean, they're clearly not moving that well. They're just spinning around in a circle. I mean, I was just kind of going, "Oh, just end it." This is just. I mean, he's not going to attack him anymore. Beast can't do anything. The House Robot's not going to do anything. The judges aren't doing anything. So it's just like, all right.
One thing I loved about this fight was Craig asking the Beast team in the control box, "Can I go and hit your robot?" It was just like
one of my favourite moments of the episode was, "Do you want us to hit your robot?" And they're going, "That's the whole point, Craig. That's why we're here."
Yeah. Can I go and hit your robot?
To ask permission.
Yeah, sure you can. All right, go and hit it again. It's great.
I mean, I don't know why I was asking. So if he'd hit it a bit more, he probably ended the fight sooner.
Yeah,
I don't know if it did. You see, I'm looking at this fight from an insider's point of view. I think that what was there was clearly a loose connection somewhere in Beast. It was very intermittent. The lights were coming on and off, and I think Craig is well aware that if he goes and starts to hit Beast with the sword again, it's going to come back to life.
Yeah.
And he's well aware that in order to get to the heat final, he has to score a knockout. So he left it. And as much as you say it's not interesting, and it isn't, you know, and there's people who I've seen saying he should have gone and tried to put them in the pit or something. The difference with this series and other series is that the judges get to review the fights back very closely on the video. Mm-hmm. Now, they never used to do that. They used to kind of have to do a lot from memory, a lot from point tallying as they went along. But what happened with this is as soon as the battle got to 3 minutes and was called as ended, the judges then reviewed the footage and decided that at one point during that battle, Beast had been immobilized for the 10 seconds. And that's a knockout, which I completely agree with.
I think that was absolutely the correct decision, because obviously Beast is immobilized on one side. My one problem with this battle, though, there was no consistency from that fight to the Eruption versus PP3D fight from the week before. I think surely that should have been called as well. But obviously,
it was clear those two weren't moving.
But
in the slightest.
I think as the series go on, you know, these things will just get ironed out. You know.
Yeah, it's. I already said last night. I was talking to somebody about this, and I said there are inconsistencies in things like processes and judges' decisions as the series went along. It's easy to kind of excuse that when you realise how quickly everything had to move for the series.
Yes, that's very true.
we didn't all sit down in a big meeting beforehand and discuss, oh, if this happens in a battle, if that happens in a battle, the judges will rule this way, they'll rule that way if this happens. We just had to get stuck in. And that goes for the production crew, the people filming it, the judges, the producers. Everyone was flying on a wire, basically.
I think
so. These inconsistencies are going to creep in every so often, but I think as long as the decision is kind of correct.
Yeah, I think moving forward, I think ultimately there has to be some kind of like discussion in terms of like if there's a robot immobilized on one side, then it's dead or not.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
I'm personally of the opinion that if it is moving on one side, it is counted as a mobile because all you can do is really vaguely shuffle in one direction, and hope you can move forwards.
When we do this in Antweights, and we tried to come up with a rule for this. And it seemed to be between, can a robot that's moving on one wheel still fight, or is it a countdown? And what we found was you can't really judge it. It depends on how active that robot still is on one wheel.
Yeah, whereas say Apollo last week was able to run.
Absolutely. Throw it back to Apollo last week. Apollo was not only still mobile on one wheel, but still attacking, still effective.
Yeah.
Whereas Beast was crawling around in a circle, unable to go anywhere. Yeah. So I think you can't really nail it down to specifics. You have to let the judges call it, and I think they called it correctly, in my opinion.
I mean, in Apollo's fight, I kept forgetting it had lost a wheel like halfway through because it was still kind of going well, despite the fact that it was half mobile.
Absolutely. Ultimately, Gabriel gets the 3 points and progresses to our heat final to be joined alongside, I think, the unluckiest robot of all of this heat, really, Ironside against Pulsar.
Yeah, I watched this fight quite a few times just before this, just because I think I wasn't really sure. I mean, obviously some of the editing could make it look different, I guess, but I don't know how long exactly they were upside down for. Like, I mean, you could have edited out some bits of it. But I don't know. It's like one of those things. Like when they got flipped over, you could see the self-rider was trying to It was just moving. I think then Pulsar came in with a hit, and I think it disabled it. It didn't move. The rest it was stuck upwards.
Both teams made very good points in the interviews after. I think Trevor Wright said that they were cease wasn't called, so they carried on and should have carried on from there, which is a very good point as well. And the fact that Kilowatt didn't really give them a chance to self-right.
No, because I mean, as soon as they tried, Pulsar hit them, then they went into Kilowatt, and then Kilowatt lifted them up and self-righting. So it's sort of like, are they knocked out? I don't know. I mean, nobody called cease. Nobody said, oh, they're out, stop it or something. It's like, and then Pulsar, basically stopped working, and they pushed them in the pit. And I was like, I don't know. It was a really strange battle. Like, again, both sides have the right have a decent argument, but
yeah,
I hate to have called that one, to be honest with you.
And Ellis afterwards said that the self-riser was fully up, and therefore they should have called it anyway.
My opinion of this battle is that it's not controversial in the slightest.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the first hit. Pulsar tipped Ironside upside down, and that was it. It was immobilized. It wasn't going to get back over. The self-righter started to work, so Ellis went in again and hit it and got it to a stage where the self-righting arm was, as you say, Sam, fully up. So it couldn't have functioned, and by that time it had broke anyway. And then Kilowatt intervened and turned Ironside back over. To me, that's a knockout for Pulsar. And because it then went on, I mean, it carried on because of the audience and because it's fun in the filming and stuff. But again, when the judges reviewed the tape back, it's very clear to see that Pulsar knocked Ironside out. And had everyone backed off and been quite boring after that, it would have been a clear KO. And I don't think this is controversial in the slightest. I think Pulsar knocked Ironside out.
I can see why the decision went to Pulsar and the 3 points was given. However, I think it was more a case of the way it was brought across. It kind of made things a little bit difficult to understand.
I completely agree with what Trevor was saying. By the way, I think if I'm in a fight and no one calls cease, I carry on fighting. Yeah, and then if it gets to the end of the fight and you've pushed the other robot in the pit, you kind of think, oh, we might have won that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a controversial decision. I think it's a very easy decision, and I think it was made quite promptly. So
yeah.
It was one of those, but that meant that Pulsar ended up on 6 points, winning both of its fights and making it through to the heat final alongside Gabriel.
Nobody expected this at the start of the heat.
I was going to say the fact that the giant wheels with an axe on it and the robot that went out in round 1.
This entire heat reminds me of the heat from way back that had Pussycat and Cassius 2 and Scutter's Revenge.
Oh,
yes, yeah, where everything just happened at
where
once.
everything happens in one heat. That was the heat where a guy brought an ant-weight in and someone was accused of cheating. And then you had Pussycat's illegal blade. You had
And of course,
Scudder.
Thermidor. Of course, Thermidor would be.
Yeah, of course. And Plunder
And Plunder
going
Storm.
out early. And, like,
It was one of the greatest heats there.
Yeah, exactly. And this heat was my favourite heat of the entire reboot because it was like I've watched it twice now and I still kind of struggle to follow exactly what's going on.
It just like I think I tweeted yesterday that I just give up on the predicting thing because there's just no way you can predict what's going to happen next in this heat. And I think the heat final was sort of it was an abridged version of this whole heat.
It was a bit like that bit in BattleBots where John Anderson threw away his fight bracket halfway through the thing, just sort of tore it up and went, well, there's no point having this anymore.
Yeah.
It was that. It was that everyone who had made a prediction based on the way the robots looked, everyone who'd made a prediction based on knowing things about the robots and their drivers were all just kind of looking at each other, shrugging, going, well, I don't know. What's going on?
I'd hate to be in the betting office for this one.
Yes.
I think,
the heat final just summed up everything perfectly. Because
I mean, it's probably the second
fantastic fight.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, any fight with Gabriel is going to be unpredictable from the start anyway. So it's kind of like it's just. I mean, I think Gabriel definitely had a lot easier time than against Ironside because only Pulsar's disc is a lot smaller and it's just a smaller robot. And there were a lot of times where it just went directly through underneath the wheels, and by the time Gabriel realized it had gone under, it was already trying to attack the other side. And it was like a mouse trying to attack an elephant. It had no idea what was going on.
Or a ferret and a giraffe, I think Dara said.
Oh yeah, ferret and a giraffe. That's probably apt as well.
Realistically,
I think Pulsar definitely got it. I mean,
I think Pulsar should have won the fight and ultimately did. But I think there were a lot of times where Pulsar's transmitter kept dying, and then Gabriel came back into the fight, and you just thought, "Oh, hello, Gabriel's going to go win this."
three mini heart attacks in one battle. It's like, it stops. Like, oh, Gabriel can win. Oh, it's moving again. Damn it! And then like a minute later, like, oh, it's not moving again. Oh.
What you can't see in that fight is every time Pulsar stops, Ellis in the booth is turning his transmitter on and off to try and get a signal back into it, and that's why it stops kind of dead and then goes again because it picks up the signal again.
Right.
So but this whole, I mean, it's such a frantic heat final, and what I love about the heat final is, although I agree with you guys, I think it went to Pulsar correctly. It was that Gabriel put up so much more of a fight than anyone expected it to.
I was going to say,
so much closer than it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think had Pulsar been fully working and had all the control issues sorted, I think ultimately it would have probably dominated the heat final. However, because Gabriel, the driving was quality. I think it was one of his sons, wasn't it?
His son Zach is known as the best driver on the live circuit, and it shows.
There's you got them. You got Michael Oates from Eruption. You've got it's Alex.
Yeah, Alex from TR2.
Those three, they're kind of about the same age, and Gabriel itself is a hard robot to control by design.
The bit where Pulsar had stopped again and they managed to come in with the sword and just hit it over and over again, right down the centre of where the disc was absolutely astonishing. Trying to aim an Axelbot like that is ridiculous, and getting it so kind of precisely spot on was a joy to watch.
This was easily the best heat final of the series, by a long way.
It's one of the best fights of the series. It was just a great summation of that heat of madness to just have this final that was so mad, and the two opponents were so different, and literally you felt anything could happen. You felt like Razor could turn up in the middle, destroy someone, and
out of nowhere,
and still kind of sit there and go, "Oh, fair enough.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think that brings us nicely to the end of the heat. Obviously, the judge's decision at the end of this fight going to Pulsar, and from going out in round 1, Pulsar won the heat and is in the grand final. Why not?
Yeah.
Anything can happen now.
Yeah. So that leaves 5 grand finalists as Carbide, Shockwave, TR2, Apollo, and Pulsar. Of course, there is.
The wild card is probably the one most contention now, I'd say.
Well, that's the thing. We have a wild. Obviously, Dave, you can't tell us who it is. It hasn't been revealed yet. But I think myself and James are both in agreement that it should be Thor.
Right.
I think Thor or maybe Gabriel now.
I was going to say Gabriel is a very close second for me. Gabriel is a very close second.
I mean, until the final, they technically were undefeated, which is.
No, they were being by Ironside, weren't they?
Oh yeah, I suppose.
It was still. There was no knockout to Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was at this stage of the competition and I knew all the results but not the wild card, I was saying exactly the same thing. I was saying it should either be Thor for dominance of the heat or it should be Gabriel for putting up the best fight. I think it was the only heat final that went to judges' decision.
It was, yeah.
So those two for me were the two that I wanted it to be out of. I think, Behemoth did very well in the heat.
No disrespect to everyone else. Like, obviously, Behemoth, Danton, Kieran, Storm too. But for me, those three weren't as strong as the other two were in their respective heats. Storm 2, we discussed last week, obviously wasn't, as impressive as we thought it was going to be. Danton Kia had a few technical issues here and there, and Behemoth just kind of petered out towards the end when it fought Carbide a couple of times. So it ultimately has to come down to those two for me. And I think
if I had to pick, I probably would pick Thor.
Yeah.
But if Gabriel was it, I wouldn't not be disappointed in the slightest. I'd love to see either one of them.
My head says Thor, but my heart says Gabriel.
Yeah, that's kind of, if I really want to if I want to get a good fight, maybe I might want to see really active fight. I see Thor, but I want to see some entertainment and good old thwack joy. Then I'll definitely want to see Gabriel in. But again, it's either one of those. If those two got in, I'd be like,
that'd be worth. I mean, any one of the five would be a worthy grand finalist. But for me, those are the two that stand out. But
they're the worthiest.
Yeah,
they're the worthiest too. I think.
Absolutely. So next week, the big one. The big one.
What, Nuts return?
Nuts for the wild card, anyone?
There was a very nice. I've got to give a shout out to a very nice man on Twitter.
I saw this.
Who said Nuts should get the wild card, and I was like, Nuts can barely bumble around a farmyard at the moment. It's putting it back in with those kind of creatures.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Let's stick in there with Pulsar and Carbide. That'd be great.
You may as well say Champa lot for wild.
I was gonna say Glitter Bomb for the wild card. Why not?
Ultimately, I think it's going to be crazy. Whatever happens, all six robots, will deserve to be the champion, and the right to be the first reboot champion.
I would say the Shockwave has got a lot of work, considering that they're probably like the most underdogish out of all the ones that have got in. I mean, I love Shockwave personally, but it has definitely. If it's something like against something like Carbide or TR2, it's going to have a lot of work to do. But I'd like to see it do well, hopefully, because I think I like Shockwave a lot of people more than a lot of people. But I really it's one I'm looking forward to seeing, and probably and Carbide, of course, as well.
Yeah.
I think if you base it purely on each robot's performance up to this point, then Shockwave kind of comes across as the weakest. But at the same time,
it was only beaten by Thor.
Yeah, it's so capable of pulling off a victory, like a surprise victory. I mean, the thing to note about the grand final is that the melees that start it off are all three-way, obviously.
Now, for me, this kind of bothers me a little bit, because I know it's still the group stage and then the round robin and then the grand final, as say the heats were. What I would have preferred like 3 1-on-1s, a loser's melee, and then go from there. But ultimately, timing.
Well, we all would have, and I think ideally they would have had 8 heats and then 8 to 4 to 2 to 1.
Yeah.
They didn't have the opportunity. They had to go for this wild card thing as well, which not everyone's a fan of. I know personally I'm not a fan of it in general, but all I'll say is that we were all a bit worried that the favourites would be ganged up on in these three-way melees. From what I hear, it doesn't really happen.
That's good.
It's a good thing to report that each robot gives as good as it gets in the opening melees, and then the round robin really is just a power tussle. It's
I mean, in the past that was like Hypnodisc's problem. Like whenever they're like in a loser's melee, everyone would just gang up on Hypnodisc immediately, and then just break without any effort.
Yeah.
I think when you're in the grand final of the reboot, there's something about, yes, you could start to talk to another team about ganging up and maybe taking out a favourite, but at the same time, you've got one eye on the trophy. And you know that if you agree with someone and then they turn on you, they could have quite an easy way through to the round robin.
Absolutely.
And you realise that there's very little kind of way to make any sort of deal with anyone, and you just got to go out there and do your best to fight to the best of your ability. And the 6 teams who managed to make the grand final all really just wanted a great big ruckus, and we get one.
Which is the best news. So at this point, James, I'm going to ask you who is going to win the series and who's going to get the wild card.
Oh boy, this is one of the hardest ones for me. It all depends on who gets the wild card as well. I mean, if Thor gets the wild card, I would put them in very high up personally. But if Gabriel gets the wild card, then I think possibly TR2 maybe. It all depends on who gets. I mean that's like the 2 scenarios. I think Thor if they get the wild card, and TR2 if Gabriel gets it or someone else gets it, isn't Thor.
So you're saying if Thor gets it, you think Thor will win the series?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's got the durability. I think it's got the speed. It's got the weapon. I think it's just an all-around one of those robots I just really adore. I mean, seeing it from Series 6 and 7 to seeing it now, it's like watching.
It's a far cry, isn't it? It really is a far cry.
Yeah, it's true. Series 6 and 7 Thor was just. It was all right, but it's better in Series 7, but not by much. But
right, so yeah. Dave, at this point, obviously, you know who. I think you're fairly sure you know who wins the series and everything else. But at this point, when you got to this point in proceedings, and you knew up to this point, who did you think was going to go and win the series?
Well, yeah, I've already said my wild card was splitting between Thor and Gabriel as well. I think I would have personally. I was talking about giving it to Thor over Gabriel purely because of the bad luck of the final, that it really did peter out to something so unexpected that it felt to me like it deserves more of a second chance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
It's like Gabriel lost its fight honorably, but Thor lost it badly, and I think there was to me it was. It's like Sam said, his heart was with Gabriel. I think my head was with Gabriel, but my heart was with Thor because I really thought he deserved a resurrection. But they were my thoughts at the time. And then at the time, hearing about the lineup, not seeing all of the fights, like I saw all of the first round fights and a lot of the second round fights, but I didn't know quite how strongly some people had performed, quite not how strongly. So taking it from a point of view of someone who then watched every heat, the strongest person by miles is TR2. They were the only people to score straight knockouts. They weren't really challenged in any particular way, shape or form. And as much as there's some big kind of loud, shouty robots in the final, you've got Carbide in there and you've got Pulsar.
Well, they literally shout.
Yeah. And you've got Apollo, who is always it's so much more impressive to watch than TR2. But TR2 for me, with Alex driving and the kind of unassumed brilliance that it had, was my pick going in, because of the kind of underdog nature of people will always kind of not expect it to win, and that to me was their biggest weapon, if anything.
They were the underdogs that just kept winning.
Yeah.
They are Leicester City.
They managed to be an underdog despite scoring straight knockouts in the heat. It's an extraordinary thing to kind of think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus they have the advantage of Apollo in the sense they didn't. I mean, apart from the very first battle where the flipper wasn't working, they never really had any faults from down there. They just kept going and always winning.
Yeah. Apollo and Pulsar both had such kind of rocky roads through.
Carbide as well, to a degree.
Carbide, had all the technical problems and having the weapon was on last legs at the end of every fight, so God knows what state it is in going into the final. And then Shockwave, we've already discussed, was kind of the surprise of the lot. So for me, TR2 was the strongest overall going into it.
I think from my point of view, like I said at the start of the series, TR2, nothing I've seen so far will change my mind at this point, but it's just going to be a hell of a ride, isn't it? It's just going to be so good.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
I think, as I said, I think Thor will get the wild card, and depending on the draw as well. Like, it depends on who gets who. Like, if TR2 ends up with Pulsar and Carbide in the first round, then who knows? But
yeah,
we'll have to wait and see.
I can state that the draw for the melees in the final was done completely at random, out of a hat.
That's good then.
Like,
that's quite a good idea.
you know, you can end up with Pulsar, Carbide, and TR2 in the same battle.
Oh, God.
You know, like you say, Sam, there's always a degree of luck with these things, and the draw plays an immensely important part in it. And when they reveal it next time, I think a lot of people, I think it'll then be game on for people putting the bets on.
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely can't wait to see. But I'm sticking with a round house, in fact, of TR2. Everyone thinks TR2, so
it's impressive. What can you say?
Maybe not that much of an underdog then.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next week, obviously. But I genuinely can't wait. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss this heat with the pair of you, and obviously Anderson, unfortunately, his internet has died because he's on the Isle of Wight. But
actually, can I say one thing? So before we finish, it was something I mentioned before, but there was a few mistakes in this episode I noticed. Like 2 times, Thermidor II and Ironside 3, there were times where when Dara was introducing them, he just called it Thermidor and Ironside.
Yeah.
He missed the numbers out. I was
that's understandable. I mean, because
I suppose, but I just can't find. I mean, I think it's less understandable Thermidor 2, considering they have been in pretty much every series apart from one called Thermidor 2.
yeah, but I call it Thermidor.
I suppose. I mean, I always just prefer it to 2 because the first one was that weird looking lobster from Series 3.
Yeah.
It's a sticking point for me, James, as well. Actually, like
Really?
because I'm super nerdy about Robot Wars.
Yeah.
If it's bloody full name, that's what it's called. It's not called that. It's called this. If they have wanted it to be called Ironside 3, they wouldn't have put a 3 on the application.
it didn't bother me as much, but I find it funny how a lot of people are complaining that Dara is saying Behemoth instead of Behemoth. It's how they say it. It's both pronunciations are acceptable. It doesn't give a shit.
Anyway, I think
Anderson's not here.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, on that note, it's been a pleasure to discuss this heat, and I genuinely can't wait for the grand final. So,
definitely.
Thank you very much to James for joining us, and once again, thank you very much to Dave for joining us. And we'll see you. Well, me and Dave will see you next week for the big one, the grand final. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.